Good evening. Tonight we're going to hear the story of the House of Atreus, which is one of the well-known Greek myths of ancient times. So if you enjoy adultery, matricide, cannibalism, filicide, fratricide, murdericide, and incest, this story will definitely be for you. Or if you've ever enjoyed just a good story about a dysfunctional family, this family takes the cake. Let's begin. The House of Atreus family tree starts with Tantalus. Tantalus had a son, Pelops, who in turn had twin sons, Atreus and Thyestes, plus these other two, but they're not quite as important to our story, so we're not really going to talk about them. But it's important for you to know that Atreus and Thyestes are twins. So here's a little picture of Tantalus. He decided that it would be an interesting idea for him to test to see how all-knowing the gods were. So he decided to cook his son Pelops, the father of Agamemnon and Menelaos, into a pie and serve the gods his son to see if they realized what was going on. And because they are all-knowing, they did realize what was going on. And Tantalus, because they were really disgusted by this move, punished him by sending him to the underworld, where he, for all of eternity, will try to reach out and eat food that looks delicious, but won't get it. So here he is, part of a tree. It's an interesting artistic representation of being held back. And he will never get the food. So that is how the family begins. So just so you know. Agamemnon and Menelaos are twins, sons of Atreus, who is the brother of Thyestes, just to review. And Thyestes is the father of Aegisthus. And that's important for you to know because we've seen Aegisthus in book 1, and he's going to be important later. So try to hold him in your mind as we move on. Thyestes, let's go back for a second. So as you can see, Irope is Atreus' wife. And Thyestes starts to get attracted to Irope, and the feeling is mutual. So they end up having an affair, and you can see here's Irope right here, and here's Thyestes, and clearly they are in their bedroom. And unfortunately for Thyestes, Atreus figures out what's going on. Grr. So he's really mad. This is not really what your brother should be doing. So he confronts Thyestes, and they have a knockdown, drag out. And this is just a poster for the Killing Room, which is an interesting reinterpretation of the House of Atreus. And there are a few modern versions of it that I find intriguing. So Thyestes and Atreus have a knockdown, drag out, but that's not enough for Atreus. And he decides, okay, I'm going to invite Thyestes to dinner. And he tells Thyestes, okay, why don't you come to dinner? We're going to work this out. I'm going to make a meat pie, and it's going to be really good. And Thyestes says, oh, good, I like meat pies, so why not? And he has some of the meat pie, and they have a great time, and they talk. And then at the end of the dinner, Atreus tells Thyestes, actually, you've been eating your own children. So just like his grandfather, Tantalus, Atreus decides he's going to bake Thyestes' children, so these are his nephews, okay, his own twin brother's children, into a pie to get him back. And at first Thyestes doesn't believe, and here they are together, Atreus and Thyestes, in a modern dramatic interpretation. He says, oh no, you did not do that. And Atreus says, oh yes, I did. And unfortunately for Thyestes, he did do it. So Thyestes, because of a law in ancient Greece, and this was very tricky of Atreus, Thyestes becomes exiled for eating human flesh. So Thyestes is exiled. He runs away, and he says, may the curse on this house continue, twin brother. May something really, as it says in the comic here, may something really bad happen to your children. And we know who his children are. His children are Agamemnon and Menelaos, the twin brothers. So after Thyestes runs away and is exiled, he asks an oracle, oh my God, what should I do with myself now? I really want to get back at my brother. What can I do? And she says, well, I have some good news for you. If you go and have a son by your own daughter, which is strange and twisted, then that son, because they'll be strange and twisted, will grow up to kill Atreus. And Thyestes says, that sounds fantastic. And so that's exactly what he does. And that son turns out to be Aegisthus. So let's remember. So here's Thyestes, here's his own daughter, and the two of them have Aegisthus, who was mentioned in book 1 of the Odyssey already. Okay, So the next part we're going to talk about, so you have some background about the House of Atreus, and let's go back for a second. So here's Agamemnon. Agamemnon and Menelaos are going to be important people in terms of the Trojan War. So here are the heroes. Agamemnon's here. Menelaos is here. And here's our friend Odysseus, who's sporting a pretty awesome hat with carvings on it. All of them have their like good hair and beards going on. They're going to look good in the war. We got some pretty nasty helmets happening here. There's Achilles. And Paris, who is also really important. So 3 goddesses approach Paris and they say, look, someone threw this apple, which you can see here in Aphrodite's hand, threw this apple into a party and said to the fairest, but we can't figure out which one of the 3 of us is the fairest. And the 3 of them are Aphrodite right here, Hera right here, and Athena, our friend, right here. So they each say, look, Paris, who is the Prince of Troy. So we know that the Trojan War were the Greeks versus the Trojans. So here's the Prince of Troy right here. And here's Hermes because he's like always involved in things like this. And he's the god of travelers and tricks and cunning. So it's fitting that he's here. So here's Hermes with his wings. And they say, okay, Paris, why don't you tell us who is the most beautiful? And if you say Hera is the most beautiful, Hera will promise you to be the king of Europe and Asia. If you say that Athena is the fairest, she will make you victorious in war and very wise. If you say Aphrodite is the fairest, you get to be with the most beautiful woman on earth. And Paris, because he's a dude, he picks Aphrodite and he says, I want to be with the most beautiful woman in the world, who happens to be Helen of Troy, who happens to be the wife of Menelaos, who is the brother of Agamemnon. Okay. So Paris comes to Sparta, where Menelaos lives, and he takes Helen with him. The goddess helps him, and he abducts Helen, although there is another version of the story that says that Helen wanted to go with him. So here's this little cap right here is like a really fashionable thing to wear in Troy. And look, he's got a lyre, so maybe he's singing her a song. But clearly they're happy to be together. So Paris and Helen leave Sparta, and they go back to Troy. And here they are. It's pretty sexy stuff. A lot of times there's sexy stuff between Paris and Helen. And sculptors love to do sexy stuff. So Menelaos goes to Agamemnon, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen Troy. So here's Menelaos, and he's petitioning Agamemnon. He says, brother, I need you to help me out here, okay? We need to go to Troy because I need to get my wife back, because that looks really bad for the king of Sparta to lose his wife to Paris, who's kind of like not really built up in mythology to be this really strong, burly dude. He's kind of just sort of like wiry and someone that should be easily beaten in the eyes of people like Agamemnon and Menelaos. And Agamemnon also knows, you know what, Troy's really rich and wealthy, and there's a lot of good stuff there, like gold and like farm animals and things you can eat and things that I can trade out to make my place richer. So he says, you know what, Menelaos, I'm going to help you out because you're my twin brother, and that's what brothers do if they're not cooking their own children and eating them. So I will definitely help you out now. So let's remember, we've got Agamemnon, we've got Menelaos. Menelaos is married to Helen, and they have a daughter, Hermione. So for Harry Potter fans, that's for you. Here's Agamemnon, and his wife's name is Clytemnestra. Agamemnon and Clytemnestra have 3 kids, Iphigenia, Electra, and Orestes. So remember these 2, Iphigenia and Orestes, because they're going to become important. And Thyestes, he's exiled, and Aegisthus is kind of over here. And by the way, Aegisthus does succeed in killing Atreus, but he kills Atreus after Agamemnon and Menelaos are born. So that's a piece of the story that you should know. Okay, Agamemnon, unfortunately, had really pissed off Artemis by killing one of her deer. And as you can see, the deer is in the sculpture with her, so clearly they're important. And he says, you know what, I'm a better hunter than Artemis, which is a bad thing to say because she's the goddess of hunting. So not only did he kill one of her deer and say, okay, I'm better than you, he really made her angry. And when he wants to go to Troy, he gets his kingdom ready. They're like, all right, we're going to go to Troy. Let's go beat these guys. They stack up their ships with all the ingredients that they need to be successful at Troy. And they sit in the harbor because Artemis says, I'm not going to give you a favorable wind that will push you to Troy, Agamemnon, unless you make up for that deer you killed. And you're going to feel real bad about saying that you're a better hunter than me. So here's the deal, Agamemnon, if you would like to go to Troy, you will need to sacrifice your daughter, Iphigenia, who at this point in time is 12. So Agamemnon is in a quandary because he told Menelaos that it'd help him. He's got all of his guys riled up to go to war. They're like, war, let's go, war, yeah, yeah. And then he finds out that the price of passage to Troy is to sacrifice his own daughter to Artemis, which he does. So here's Iphigenia. She's about to be sacrificed, and Agamemnon has the knife here, which he's going to cut her throat open, and they're going to catch all the blood in this basin down here. And look, here's Artemis with her deer, cradling it like a child, watching this go on. And here's people saying, please, for the love of God, don't do this. But for the sake of getting to Troy, he does do this. So he sacrifices Iphigenia, and we all go to Troy. So let's remember, we've got Paris here, Menelaos, Agamemnon, and Achilles. And when they get to Troy, they don't immediately go and win. They sit outside the gates of the city for 10 years while Achilles pouts about something that Agamemnon had done to him, but that's a different story. So Achilles has a close friend, but some scholars consider him a lover. His name is Patroclus, and Patroclus knows that to get Achilles to go into war, he's going to have to take on Hector, the Trojan prince. And unfortunately, Hector kills Patroclus. And here's the Greeks leaving for Troy. Hector kills Patroclus, and here's a great statue of Menelaos bringing the body of Patroclus back. And I love this because it shows the human side of Menelaos, that he's not just this crazy warrior that's trying to get his wife back, but he really cares. So he brings Patroclus back, and here's a close-up of the sculpture. You can see Patroclus' hand clutching onto Menelaos as he's dying. And it makes Achilles angry, and so Achilles goes into the war, and then all the crazy stuff you know as the Trojan War happens. Okay? And we all know that the way the Trojans get into the city is through the Trojan horse. And once they get in there, they really destroy Troy, and they win. And now it's time for Agamemnon and Menelaos and Odysseus to return. It takes 10 years. Meanwhile, while Agamemnon has been gone fighting this war, Clytemnestra has been sitting there for 10 years thinking about Iphigenia and what Agamemnon has done. And she's angry. And she's angry, and she's angrier, and she's waiting, and she's angry. And it gives just this time to kind of slide on in and say, hey, Clytemnestra, your husband's kind of a tool, you know, how he killed your daughter and all, so maybe you should get with me. And he works on her, and he works on her, and he finally convinces her to go to bed with him and to create a relationship. So I guess this says, you know, if that guy doesn't die at war, we'll take care of him when he gets home. And so here's Clytemnestra, and she's quite powerful, and she's got a big axe, which she has been just holding and sharpening and waiting for her husband to get home, waiting for the opportunity to pay him back for what he did to Iphigenia. So when Agamemnon gets home, he gets ready to take a nice bath, and here's Aegisthus here, and he's pushing Clytemnestra, and he says, do it. Kill him. Do it. What has he ever done for you? He killed your daughter. He left you for 10 years. Do it. And in this piece of artwork, she has a knife, which I find intriguing because the myth says she used an axe. And what she did with that axe is she chopped him into little bits. And down here is his body, and people are crying over it, and here she is triumphant over the body of her husband, holding the axe, which she used to chop him into little pieces. So here's a couple of pieces of art that show Clytemnestra, and I think this is, you know, this one's more contemporary. It's really interesting. The legend is she killed Agamemnon while he was taking a bath. And here's just another picture for you to look at. So, meanwhile, Clytemnestra does this, and she has a son, Orestes. So Iphigenia, we know, is dead. And Orestes realizes he needs to get back at his mother, and he's pushed to do this. So what he does is he takes revenge on Clytemnestra by killing her and Aegisthus. And I love this because you see all this gore coming out of Aegisthus' mouth and neck, and it's clear that he's dead. He's very gray. And Orestes takes his mother's life, for which he is then haunted by Furies who are pointing out what he did as he runs away, and they're screaming in his ear. And again, it shows that the curse of this house has just continued. So let's recap. Atreus, Thyestes, knock down, drag out. Atreus cooks Thyestes' son. Thyestes has Aegisthus to kill Atreus. Agamemnon and Menelaos. Agamemnon's married to Helen, who got stolen for the Trojan War. Agamemnon is married to Clytemnestra. He sacrifices his daughter. She kills him, and then his son and her son comes back, and kills her, and that is the House of Atreus.